Hi, and welcome to another episode of eCommerce One. Today's guest, John Redman, founder of Bosco. How you doing, John?
Very good. Thanks, Richard. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. We have actually had a little chat before you came on, and we're literally about an hour away, which makes it's a big change to normal. We're normally darting around the globe, but an hour away. We could, like you said, we could have done this one face to face, and maybe if you do a good job, we'll get you on next time face to face.
Yeah, we'll do that. Well, there's a sort of incentive, and maybe we can go to the pub and share notes afterwards.
Oh, that would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. So, I know you've been in the e-com space and e-commerce for a long time, in e-commerce years. So I think it'd be good to kick off with a bit of insight into how you got into the industry, what you've been doing over the years. And then obviously you've then set up Mode 25. So I think it'd be good to, Modo 25, it'd be good to sort of kick into that. And then I know you've also got the Bosco. So if you sort of bring all that in, give us that history, and then talk about the two core things there.
Yeah, no, of course. So I got involved in, I suppose, digital and internet. My first ever job after failing to get into the Air Force was in selling training on how to use the internet.
Oh, okay.
Back in the mid 90s, and we used to have the Internet for CEOs. It was a course we used to sell. That was our most popular course. And it was like the introduction to internet, and sort of anyway. So after that, I got into database marketing, and there's a company out there which many of your listeners will have definitely used, many of whom may even still use, and that was a company called Quick Address Systems, QAS. And we used to have this postcode software where you type in a postcode and it bring back your address. And at the time, that was revolutionary. Right? Some people are like thinking, well, that's just normal. But I remember the first time I phoned up somewhere and I gave my postcode and they told me where I lived, and I was like, wow, how did you do that? So I used to sell that to everybody. It was all the time and materials, but it was also, that was the start of sort of e-commerce. And I remember presenting to the board of a very large, it was Debenhams. We presented to the board of Debenhams on this postcode lookup thing, and it could also help them find their nearest store. And I remember the board at Debenhams at the time said, wow, I now know why the internet exists. It's so people can type in their postcode and find our nearest shop so they can go and buy stuff. And I was like, no, that's not, no, maybe people buy stuff on this as well. But anyway, so I've been involved in all this, and I went from sort of the letterbox doing direct mail software and database software into doing email software, and where we used to send out millions and millions of email marketing, and then into transactional email, and then basket abandonment type stuff. And then through different type of industry events, actually through e-consultancy, I got into search marketing, so SEO and PPC, and helped a very good friend of mine grow a business in North Leeds, actually called Search Laboratory, where we grew a small digital agency from 6 or 7 of us above a Thai takeaway to hundreds of us over 3-4 years, where we were then doing digital marketing for like ASOS, House of Fraser, River Island, Superdry, and our whole thing was sort of global PPC and SEO. And then roll forward to where we are now, after I've set up Modo 25 last year, no, 2 years ago now, 2 years ago, so November before the pandemic, we set up the business proper with a friend of mine who I actually met on a charity bike ride. So I'm doing this charity bike ride from London to Australia over 25 years, where we do a chunk each year, and we're in the process of raising money to fund an orphanage in Uganda. So we're taking kids off the street, giving them an education, clothing them, and that's and we were sort of cycling. I got really to know him really well between France. Between Paris and Geneva. Anyway, become great mates, and he founded a business called Skyscanner and sold that business. And we became, most people have used Skyscanner. So we just became great mates, and we were on one of our sort of boys' holidays, and I was explaining I had this idea. I said, look, I want to help businesses in-house their digital marketing over time. I think having run agencies, I think our biggest fear is when someone phones up and goes, I'm in-housing everything. And you go, well, are you sure you want to do that? So I think there's an opportunity to help people with some of the skill sets learn how to do it themselves, right? Because some of the skill set, maybe not all the strategy, maybe not all the high-end stuff, but some of it, I think people want to in-house, whether that be a PPC, SEO, etc. And then so that became Modo 25, where we help people over time, if they want to, learn how to in-house. And that could be anything from strategy through to recruitment, through to training, through to ongoing needs assessment, all that sort of stuff, bit of execution. So we do that. And then in the background of that, I was telling Bon, I was like, but I think the big opportunity is the problem with the world right now is everything's a Google first world and we're all biased. I said, right, no, it's a bit like in the 70s to 80s, nobody gets fired for buying IBM, right? Nobody's getting fired for buying Google clicks. Okay, but actually, is buying Google clicks the right thing to be doing? And I think it's actually got compounded and worse during the pandemic, because suddenly everybody and anybody in any retail business thinks they're a digital marketing guru now, and because all their shops were closed. So we've got into this situation that maybe it's Google first, maybe Facebook second, or whatever. I think Facebook have kicked themselves, well, not them, I think Apple have kicked Facebook a bit recently with all of the tracking issues, and that's certainly a problem. But what I thought would be really neat is, could we create some software that's platform agnostic and independent to let agencies and brands and everybody have a single view of where should I spend my next pound or my next dollar? Wow. So where should I invest my next pound or dollar? So we set off on this journey 2 years ago. We've invested 7 figures in building some tech. And I suppose what we're trying to do for people buying online media is what Skyscanner did for people buying flights, give them a real view of what the market is and give them an opportunity to predict where they should invest their money. So that's what Bosco is. And Modo 25 is a digital marketing in-housing company. We're about 37 people, and we've got clients all over the world who are using Bosco now to predict where to spend their money.
Wow, that is one hell of an intro.
Sorry, I went on a bit. I do. Well, I'm a Yorkshireman. I like to talk. Yeah.
Oh, we have a bit of a giggle on here at times, so that excuse my warped sense of humor. But so some great naming conventions there. Modo 25, Bosco. How did the names come?
Yeah, so the Modo 25 bit is all linked to. So when Bon and I said, right, I think we're going to do this, and Bon was like, well, I'll put the money up. You've got to run the business. I said, right, okay. I said, but we still want to do, because we met on the charity bike ride. I said, well, I still want to do something for the kids in Uganda. And we were coming up with all these names, Richard, like Certainty and Probable and all these agency names that you hear many times. And I said, wow, that doesn't really get across our purpose of like, we're going to make some money, but then we're going to use that money to do some good, right? And we want that to be part of our business, and it's sort of written into who we are. So I said, well, why don't we name the business after one of the kids? So one of the children at the orphanage is called Modo, and the honest answer is we couldn't get modo.com, right? So the reason it's 25 is we met on the charity bike ride 25. So Bon and I's connection is the 25 adventures from London to Sydney over 25 years. So we thought, right, well, it's got to be Modo 25. And then we were building this piece of software, and I was like, we've got to have it linked to charity. And Bosco is the name of the man who runs the charity. So he provides the vision and direction and the future for Modo. So we were like, well, that's got to be the name of the software. So it sort of sits at the heart of what we're doing. My long-term vision, and we're going to get there, is at the moment we're helping create jobs and well, we're helping to educate the kids and take them off the street. So there's this big slum in Ginger that we're trying to help eradicate through education. But actually, the issue is we're educating these kids and then they're not getting a job.
Okay.
So wouldn't it be amazing if we could create a digital hub in Ginger and actually create a job? Everybody thinks I'm mad, right? They all think I'm crazy. But I've got this sort of plan, and I think there's twofold to that. It'd be a great opportunity to send young, smart people from the UK over to Uganda to help train and coach, and it'd be a great life experience for them, and it'd be great for the kids over there. And I think it's doable. The time zone's not too bad. The first language English, they're all great at maths, and their work ethic and attitude is really spot on. So I think it's got mileage, but everybody thinks I'm mad.
What a beautiful story. What a beautiful, yeah. I've heard of a few stories of how names have come about. That's great. That's really great. Thank you for sharing that with everybody. So let's have a little chat on ecom. So ecom, obviously our listeners all around the world, using multiple platforms and multiple channels, but do you have a specific channel that you sort of scream about more than others in terms of, an e-commerce store that maybe doing 10, 20 million pounds a year? I know it's quite a broad question, but are you
no, I think the biggest channel they probably are using and chucking money at is probably Google Shopping, and that's probably the right place. Yeah. I think there's always areas of optimization within there, doing it better, sorting out your feeds, and but one of my previous businesses, so I realized I was going on a little bit, Richard, so I cut out a couple of moves of different businesses I've been running. But one of the businesses, the last business before this, is we wrote some feed management software called Product Caster, which was also a CSS tool. Yeah. And I think a lot of understanding your feed from your e-com store to populate all your ads in all your different places can save you a huge amount of time, effort, optimization, stuff, right? There's loads of opportunities there. But I think the biggest missed opportunity that I think, talking about people of 20 million quid turnover who are missing at the moment, is affiliates. Right? Affiliates, right? Everybody thinks affiliates is just cashback or discount codes and is a bit dirty and a bit grimy. However, I think you should call it partnerships, or you should look at it with a different lens. There is huge opportunities to gain genuine incremental sales that you wouldn't have got, all on a cost per acquisition basis.
Yeah.
So it's relatively low risk. The problem is it's got a historical bad reputation, and often because of that, a lot of the agencies don't do it, so you have to deal direct with a network, and then that's, like, in my opinion, a bit like having the fox inside the hen house, because they're all running around and they just get maximum commission, so they're not going to check everything. So anyway, I think affiliates done properly is the best opportunity, and especially coming up to, say, peak and Black Friday and trading period around Christmas, that if someone's going to do something different for 2022 is if they should sort out their affiliates, or even just explore it. That'd be my sort of one channel if it was one.
Yeah. Oh, great. It's not something we talk about too much, to be fair. 6 episodes, 8 episodes, I think, actually, but when we go live. And affiliates, obviously you're not paying an affiliate until they've sold something, are you? Typically.
Yeah.
Obviously it's different models. There'll be some setup fees and things like that potentially, but ultimately, as long as you've got your percentages right, you've got the margins in the product, you've got an army of people out there. And as you say, I think that it is a bit of a dirty word, isn't it? Affiliates, or I think of ClickBank and things like that when you start talking. Obviously that's a whole different. That's not e-commerce specific. That's more information marketing.
Yeah, but people think Quidco or cashback sites or just discount codes, and people then taking your codes and spamming it all over the internet. Some of that does go on, but if it's a well-managed program, and you're right though, you need the margin in your product and everything else. But I also think a lot of e-commerce businesses that have grown have just relied on buying the traffic from PPC or Facebook and have scaled their business that way. And they're sort of thinking, well, I don't want to pay for it twice. And they think but actually some of this will be incremental. And it's extra. This is extra sales. Who doesn't want some extra sales?
No, totally. So forecasting, I think, is a good thing to talk about. So we're looking at affiliates. We talked about Google. We talked about shopping, which is obviously Google. Well, there's obviously other versions of shopping, but CSS you referred to and whatnot. Obviously, is Google specifically shopping, or shopping ads, as it's called. Not Google shopping technically. It's shopping ads now, isn't it? Obviously, you've got all these channels. What's the best way to decide on sort of spend when you're looking? Let's take this 20 million again. I know it's quite a broad question, but when you're trying to decide on what to spend where, there's the obvious I guess factors and flags in the ground where you've got historical data to look at what's worked well, where the margins are potentially. But do you have like a formula that you focus on when you're looking at, I know when we're talking about Bosco, is that what that does particularly?
Yeah. So what I wanted to do was, in the past, so the last business I was involved with helping scale, the business in Hull called Summit. And we used to do a lot of the digital marketing for Argos, and Argos were always saying, right, if we could sell more, if we had more budget, where could we sell more stuff? And we were like, oh, well, it's going to be, it's come up to the Euros, it's going to be Sony TVs. We're going to sell more big TVs ahead of the Euros, and we'll do some modeling, and we'll try and predict. And then you need to spend some money on Google here. And then we built out some more programs around, when the temperature changes by X, your demand for paddling pools goes up, or when the temperature goes down, the demand for hot water bottles. So we used to have data scientists after data scientists looking at all this stuff for Argos, and I was like, this is really quite interesting. But ultimately, what we're doing is helping people spend more money on Google. And actually, is the answer here, where else could I be spending my money to achieve my objectives, where my objective might be, how do I get the most valuable new clients? Which channels should I actually be investing in to get the highest volume of new clients, or the most loyal clients, or the highest customer lifetime value? So I was very fortunate when I sort of had this idea. I put a notice on LinkedIn, and this just had to set this business up. And this chap I used to work with, he was our previous head of data science at Summit, who'd emigrated back out or gone home to Australia, so was no longer working. So we said, "What are you up to? I'd love to work with you again." And I said, "Oh, I've got this question I want to answer, which is, which channel should I invest my next pound in?" And he goes, "Oh, how can you get the data?" And I goes, "Well, I don't know." So anyway, we went off on this journey. So to answer your question, this is exactly what we look at every day. And fundamentally, if you're a big media, if you're a big agency and you're talking to someone like Vodafone, they'll have armies of econometric people and data scientists working all this out. But if you're, as you said, a 20 million turnover e-commerce business, you probably don't have 3 full-time data scientists sat there on the payroll working this out, and you're probably doing most of your digital marketing in-house, or you might have a freelancer or a relatively medium-sized agency, small to medium-sized agency. They probably don't have a full-time data science team either. So what we wanted to try and do was democratize all this high-level data and thinking, and give it that level of computing power and knowledge to everybody. So what Bosco actually does do is, if you put in your goals and your objectives of what you're trying to achieve, it will give you the split of which pots you should spend it in. And it takes into account not just the historical data of your performance, it will also predict, based on your category and the demand in that category across all platforms, so Facebook, Amazon, I know, Pinterest, TikTok, all the different categories. It will look at, right, based on the products you sell, based on what your acceptable cost of sale is, your acceptable ROAS, or your acceptable cost per acquisition, and the budgets and everything else, and your average order value, we think actually you should pull back in Google, and you should take that money and spend it in Facebook or Snapchat or TikTok or whatever. So that's what we're trying to do, is get people to open their eyes and ask better questions.
Is that all on paid channels, or do you look at like the SEO?
Well, now if I could forecast SEO, Richard, I wouldn't be sat here. But no, so it is possible. But what we do, so most of the forecasting ability is on paid channels. And actually, what we're trying to do is give people questions to go, so give business leaders questions to ask their team, or give agencies opportunities to be able to plan better, to help support their clients better. So I would say, in terms of how can you forecast and plan, it's an element of historical data. It's also about demand, and it's also about opportunity. So where's the cheaper traffic? Right. So which channels are the emerging? So what's the new channel opportunity? To go back to just the SEO question, I'm not swerving it. What we do within our technology platform is we can see how much you're paying for certain keywords. Right. We can also then see, well, what positions you rank for those keywords in organic. Right. We can then do some cross-referencing to go, well, if you were position 1 in the top 3 for those keywords, you could potentially reduce your reliance on paid and potentially get that traffic. So here's roughly the SEO opportunity, or roughly what you would be paying for those clicks if it was paid. And I think, well, it's how long's a piece of string, but a lot of people versus what they spend on Google clicks underinvest in SEO, in my opinion.
100%. I think there's nothing better, I don't think, than forecasting SEO when it comes to quite often you will get an SEO proposal from an agency. We've been doing it. We're in our 13th years, and we've got 2 agencies here, and and the stories we hear, you're paying whatever it might be, $5,000 a month, and there's no data behind anything. There is no reporting on movements. But obviously, what you can do right at the front end is you can forecast. You can look at what you said there. Look at the keyword gaps. Look at maybe the areas they're focused on. But then, what are the opportunities that maybe they're not even looking at, which you can get that data from Search Console. Obviously out of GA, where they might not even be focused on, and actually see that actually there's a huge opportunity for growth. Obviously doing proper competitor analysis. There's obviously other tools out there as well.
So what Bosco does, and again, this was sort of my obsession, is there's loads of really cool tools out there, Richard, that just do 1 or 2 things, but there isn't anything that looks at the whole picture. So we actually suck in a feed from SEMrush, SEO Mars, the keyword tool, SpyFu, the Keyword.io, similar, all these multiple tools, but also Search Console, also all the different platform APIs, mash all that data together and go, right, based on, I don't know, if you sell, high-end trainers to this demographic, right, this is the size of your market, and this is where you are, and this is where the competition, and this is, I suppose, if you want to win, you'd have to spend this much on paid. Actually, if you haven't got that much, here's the opportunity on the long tail with an SEO. And I think a lot of people end up getting, I suppose, get too into the detail and they don't look at the size of the prize. Actually, if we had a really good, solid technical SEO plan across the whole site, right, actually, we could pick up loads of long tail, and the cumulative effect of all of that
is more than
it is more than being number 1 for this keyword, right? But I also think, because it's not instant, I think one of the things that's happened, Richard, is people have got obsessed with this instant hit of performance, right? Pay £1, get my £10. Pay £1. So we're all fighting over the bottom end of that funnel, and it's a bit like everybody's got on the Atkins diet. And actually, what we need to do is change our lifestyle and go to the gym. So PPC is a bit like the Atkins diet, and SEO is like changing your lifestyle and going to the gym.
Yeah, a bit more commitment needed. Yeah.
Well, it is. Yeah, a bit more long-term thinking.
Yeah.
Rather than instant hit.
Yeah, love it.
Anyway.
Right. So obviously you're working with a lot of brands. If you've got 30 plus people in house, developing the tools, the software, and dealing with a lot of marketers and e-commerce stores. Now, what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes you're seeing people are making with their marketing of their store? Where our listeners could maybe stop and have a think about those specifics. What do you see consistently where people are making mistakes?
Some of my clients might be listening. We better be careful. So I would say they're not moving into video fast enough.
Yeah.
And they're scared that video is expensive. They're scared that video needs some sort of high-level production quality, and they're really nervous that when they think video, they're thinking TV ads.
So you're thinking video ad, you're saying meaning video ads?
Well, video ads and or video creative, or as in social video content, user-generated content. But the way in order to engage, I would say most audiences nowadays, video and moving images are more engaging. If you think now of the speed of the mobile web, right, it's no longer a problem to watch a video on your phone on 4 or 5G, right? That is barriers gone. Right. And also the video production quality of our phones and stuff is you can actually shoot almost like an HD format video on your iPhone. Right. So there's no reason to go out and invest tens of thousands of pounds in kit. So I think, and then linking that through to a sort of actionable insight of what people are doing a poor job at video content. Or I think actually the big crime is they're just not doing it, right? Because they think it's hard. And and again, it's a great opportunity if you think, well, we've got skills shortage, we can't find people. Well, get an intern in, right? Who's straight out of college, who's really excited about video. Give them some decent direction, training, coaching, and set them loose and let them work on your clients or let them work within your team. Because I think that's, and we're seeing some amazing opportunities, or Bosco is actually predicting, well, if you moved your money into YouTube advertising, it's going to do this, right? Because the way we've consumed media now over lockdown has changed. Right? In our house, there's 4 people in 4 different rooms looking at 4 different laptops, watching 4 different things. Right? We do like each other though. But yeah, but the way we all consume the media, and that then means that the advertising strategies have had to change. So I'd say people are doing video content and video advertising poorly, but those who get it right can do exceptionally well.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway. I think very rarely, just as an example, you know, we're looking at a new Google ad account probably every 3 or 4 days here, you know, and you go straight to video ads, and well, you don't, because they're not there normally. They're not in the account. But maybe I dabble with display, and obviously search and shopping as in the Google, you know, accounts, you know, are very prevalent, and you know, huge spends and whatnot. Whereas video ads and, you know, videos as a whole, and then you obviously got that side of sort of your potentially user generated content for your social media, for your, you know, influencer side of things, where you can obviously get your army of raving fans to work with them, and they can create video which then can be used for paid ads potentially as well. Or
that's just, if you can get really good quality user generated content and agree with the owner of that content that you can reuse it in return for whatever, free pair of shoes or whatever it is, then fantastic. And then it's people buy into that, don't they? Because it's like they're watching someone like themselves, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm like them, I'll buy those. So yeah, I think I'd say people should explore in 2022 video.
So let's say you know, we've got people listening in, and the right video ads, right? What would you say would be an initial test budget? They're going to, what's a test? Not an amount of money, sorry. What would be a test that an e-com store could go and do? You know, if you want to go to Google.
I suppose, yeah, I would look at Google, and I'd look at YouTube ads, and I'd look at a pre-roll, and I'd look at potentially, it's really simple, go find your audience. So let's take an instance of, if you're a bike shop and you sell bike and cycling equipment, for instance, in the winter, we know that there's going to be loads of middle-aged men in Lycra like me, sat on their turbo trainers watching training videos, right?
There's a picture for you guys.
Yeah, give me 2 seconds. I'll come back in my Lycra. But no, and they're sat there. And what normally happens on your machine, and you'll get retargeted on through the all the GDN stuff. I will getting retargeted things that are either someone else on my computer's used or I've used or whatever. But actually, there's an opportunity to find your audience and test and target. Right, so if you know, like brands, so people who are watching, I don't know, a GCN training video are likely to be interested in some bikes from my bike shop or some new cycling equipment or whatever. It's a logical fit. So your audience is good, the content's good, and people aren't going to get offended by. And actually, it'd be interesting to see. I don't know what the stats are. Is how many people are paying for the premium version of YouTube without the ads yet. Right, that I'd like to know that, because I would say it's still low, because the ads that so far aren't offensive enough. Right? I'm nearly there with and as a person in advertising, I shouldn't say this, I'm nearly there with ITV, because the experience on the ITV hub is terrible. It really annoys me, all those ads. But again, going back to the YouTube situation, a pre-roll, relatively easily shot ad, which you could probably put together in something, a combination of any of the Adobe suites and your mobile phone, or even Canva or something. You don't have to invest millions of pounds in this. And I would say test that, and a few £1,000 with a really clear call to action, probably some sort of sale message. I wouldn't do it as a branding exercise. I'd do it on a specific product with a specific campaign to see if it works. Real boom, right?
No, that's great. That's great advice. Right. So, slight tangent then. Attribution seems to be the you know, very hot topic at the moment. Tell me what you thought on that, and you know, what should our listeners be thinking about? You know?
Well, I think this is a friendly show, so I can sort of be a bit more. So, attribution's a bit like teenage sex, Richard. Right? Everybody's talking about it, but nobody's doing it. So it's one of those things that's talked about a lot, I think, but is very rarely executed and implemented properly. And that's fundamentally, I think there's 2 reasons for that. One reason is because actually it's quite hard to get the data together and get your head round. But I think that's now possible. So with systems like Bosco, we have to organize all your data anyway, right? So we have to get all your channels into one place, into a big Google Cloud, and we provide Bosco for clients and for agencies. And that's a start of a sort of attribution journey. But actually the bigger and harder discussion and an issue is getting the board to agree that suddenly the budget and the value of this channel is now different. Right, so getting everybody to go, oh, so now that channel isn't getting this much budget, that's now going on to that channel. And if all the channels are owned by different people, that's also an internal battle.
Within the business, yeah.
I would say it's easier to get attribution rolled out in a smaller company where the owner understands the metrics, right? And I think it's getting people to understand, well, so what I would normally say is, if you're going to look at this, is let's look at a month's worth of data. Let's look at every single transaction. Let's look at how many steps there are, right? If the average is there's only 2 or 3 steps, it's probably not worth the effort, right? If there's more than 3, and let's say up to 7 over that period, and you think, well, hang on, there's a load of data we can learn.
Yeah.
But the thing with attribution, I suppose, Richard, is they're all wrong. Every attribution model is fundamentally wrong. None of them are factually correct or statistically correct. It's just which one is least wrong and what's the best fit for my business.
Yeah.
So what we normally would suggest, or what the sort of things we talk about, is we'll get a model of best fit and then run with it and see if actually your business does perform better. And actually, an attribution model is better than no attribution model, right? Although you could argue that last click wins is still an attribution model, because at least you're measuring something. But I'd argue that's probably the worst version, because you're going to miss out on the upper funnel. And I think where we're getting to now, is particularly sort of post-pandemic time, is the costs on the platforms now. If everybody's just measuring last click, it's getting too expensive.
Yeah.
Like, you can't make it work because everybody's fighting over those clicks at the bottom of the funnel. The UK is one of the most fiercely competitive online marketplaces in the world. Right, we've got high consumer confidence to buy online. We've got high propensity to spend online. We've got huge competition. Right, and we're a small island, so that means the digital agencies have got to be good.
Yeah, that is true. I think. Going back to the AdWords and attribution, I think, how many accounts do you log into then? Or I guess it's quite a lot, where it is probably first click or last click, and they're not using sort of a linear or a.
I know, some of them, they've tried some of the tests in the standard tests in Google Analytics, and then Google goes in and gives it. So then the answer is often Google still wins. It's like, I think we're in this biased world, whereas if you go to Google and say, where should I spend more money? And Google will go, well, Google. If you go to Facebook, funnily enough, Facebook will say Facebook. And I also think it's difficult. And I think also it's a bit like people go with what they know, and they're scared. I think often they're scared to change as well, because it's been working.
Yeah.
And now it's quite a big number. And if you're going to say, what do you mean you're not going to give the credit to PPC anymore? It's going to move, and it's going to go to display, or it's going to go to SEO, or it's going to go here. Well, how's that going to work? And well, let's model it out. And I think the thing is, what you can do is, if you've got the data, is model out what would we have done differently if we had that, and how would the numbers look. So it's difficult, though. It's difficult getting your data organized, getting everybody to buy into it. That's the challenge.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it for the next 5 years. But
oh yeah, it's only going to get harder, because we'll have more channels, we'll have less cookies, we'll have a lot less data, so it's going to just get harder.
Yeah, totally. So I think it'd be good to give us maybe a couple of examples of campaigns that you've worked on, or your clients have worked on. Obviously you've worked, for your own. You've obviously got a lot of clients now through your agency now, and obviously worked at other agencies and whatnot, and set them up. And, you mentioned a few agencies there: Search Laboratory, Summit, 2 fairly large agencies in the retail space in the UK. But what would you say? A couple of campaigns that you've been privy to. What was done, what was the outcome, or any sort of insights you can give the listeners into some things that have worked really well, maybe obviously as recent as possible.
Yeah, so actually I can. Yeah, so this is it's a shoe retailer. They are an active client of ours, and they're in the process of in-housing. And what we did with those guys, and I think this is often a missed opportunity if people have got physical stores as well, is understanding the sort of local search and understand. So there's two sides to this. So there's one which is actually advertising within Google Maps, right? So if someone types in shoe shop within Google Maps, you can actually promote your local listing, right? A lot of people miss the opportunity to do that. So that's something, but then we also link that back through to also product inventory ads. So if this is another data problem, right? How many pairs of shoes have you got in store versus online versus click and collect, right? That's, for some businesses, that's really hard to do. But then giving the opportunity to, so if you were to search on men's loafers leads, or men's brogues or whatever, up, and it goes, and again, this now gives you the opportunity to compete with Amazon, because you can go buy now, click today, collect today on your way home, because there's one available in store around the corner. And I do think if people have physical stores as well as a website, that ability to offer same day and compete with the Amazons of the world, I think, and we've proved with this particular client with the click and collect, is people then have a much better shopping experience, have the chance, if it's a clothing based thing, to try it on, so then returns are a lot easier, right? And then also upsell, cross sell, the staff in the store, all of that, it's a better experience. So I'd say that's a recent campaign, and the sort of, as the stores opened again, we were really onto that and helping this client understand how to execute that. So I
think that's a great example there, because I think local inventory ads, local ads, in the well, I would say 3-pack, local maps and whatnot. Very rarely you see it. Very rarely see it. Obviously, it's specific for, we work with a retailer locally, and they've got 228 stores, I think it is. And we're doing a lot of new sort of, they're sort of quite historically a physical store business, and the web is definitely secondary for them. But the ability to take those inventories, those feeds, we talked about feeds and shopping earlier in the episode, but obviously those feeds from a local perspective, what's in that store, so you can book stroke order, reserve those products. Again, that's something I think is not used very often. I think inventory.
We built some specific software at Summit for Argos, which was, we had a feed from every single store, 800 stores, and we had the feed from the website. And we were like, if you search, these are some really boring facts, but Argos sell more dartboards than anybody else, right? Yeah. So it's dartboards, right? So if you would search dartboard, and if there's one in the store in Lincoln available, it will say buy now today in Lincoln, boom, with the pin, off you go. And if it does, and they refresh that feed, it's every few minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And then, funny enough, we go in Argos, you don't just pick up your dartboard. Right? You might buy some batteries, or you might buy something else, or you might buy something else. Yeah. Buy some darts, or buy an hockey. It's
not too many cross sales with darts. So you got your darts, your flights, your hockey.
Yeah. Lager.
I was going to say lager, to be fair. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's I think, yeah. So I think I'm still surprised by the number of retailers who do have stores who don't do it, and that is a good opportunity for people.
Great. I think we do have a lot of listeners. We talk about shopping a lot, shopping feeds, CSS, shopping structure, different hybrid models around using smart and manual and combinations. But I don't think we've actually mentioned inventory ads yet. After probably 8 or 9 episodes purely on shopping. So that's a great one. That's great.
Yeah.
So
I think.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say, if you are, even if you've only got 1 store or 2 stores and you've got a website, this isn't something that's just the luxury of multiple big chains, right? Actually, if you've got 1 store, it's probably more important, because if they are within a certain radius of where your store is, you probably want to get them in store, right?
Yeah.
And so actually getting local inventory ads set up properly, and it's probably easier as well. Your data's probably easier, because you might even be picking your e-commerce stuff from your store anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I think that what you did mention as well, I won't let that escape, because I think the guys that are listening, they're making sure that those feeds are getting refreshed, not just once a day. If you're running on lower stocks, which is understandable, especially now more than ever. Obviously stock's got its own challenges.
Yeah.
But if if you've got low stocks, you sell out, and the feed says you've got it, and you're booking stuff, and you're not refreshing those feeds.
Or you're going to waste your money on your advertising. You're going to low. It's going to affect your quality score over time, and it's actually worse than not doing it in the first place.
Ultimately, have a disgruntled person coming into the store, something that doesn't exist, or all sorts of challenges. So I think that's the same with any shopping feed. Quite often you log into, you see the usual suspect of issues in a feed. Obviously, only updating it once a day at midnight. If you've got fast moving stock coming through, you obviously can change that to whatever you want. So making sure those feeds are getting updated regardless of inventory ads, normal ads, shopping ads. Right. So I always like to sort of do a bit of a future thinking, a bit of crystal ball. So if we're sat here in 18 months, what do you think we're going to be focused on? What we're going to be talking about? What we're going to be saying? In the last, what's coming down the pipe? Do you think?
Well, meta ads. So we're getting he's understanding the inventory. How do you price the inventory in the billboards at the side of the FIFA football game that the kids are playing? Right.
So you're sitting here. Your ad is in FIFA on the game.
On the game, targeted in a personalized nature based on the demographic of the players.
Wow, love it. In the game.
In the game.
Not at the stadium. We're not talking about us at.
No, not us at the stadium. So me playing you, I'll be Leeds United, you can be Lincoln Town, right? And we're playing each other on FIFA.
I get it. And then I see Argos adverts for darts in the game.
In the game, yeah.
See cycling shop.
And then it retargets you because it knows you've watched those because you're logged in some way to play the game with the same email address. So then it's got first party data on you, and then it'll follow you around somewhere.
And you jump onto Facebook or Meta again, should I say?
Well, well, they've nicked that name, but the other one which
with it, to be fair.
No. The other one where, in terms of giving you a real example apart from FIFA, is so I do. As I've talked about before, this whole cycling thing. I use an app called Zwift, and Zwift is this thing that links to my turbo trainer, and I cycle in the virtual world around London or up a big mountain, or there's this thing called Watopia, which is this made up world. But I can cycle down the Mall in London, and there's billboards, right? And there's people advertising on these billboards. They currently pay just to do a deal, but they could do a CPM based on the demographic, and I could buy that media on some form of, I don't know, demand side platform. Right, where I go, I want cyclists who are in the mid-40s who ride a bike like this, who are cycling around London on a Sunday afternoon. Boom.
That's most cyclists, isn't it? Mid-40s.
yeah. We've done a lot about cycling, but what else within that sort of virtual environment can we do? And then the other one, I would say, this is a bit of a leap, and I've seen the technology work, but people are scared to roll it out. Is now there could be out-of-home digital boards like the ones on the tube and like the ones on the side of the bus stop that can analyze. They initially thought it was going to be facial recognition, Richard, but they now reckon your gait is the best way of analyzing people. We all have a unique gait, right? They can confuse some people's faces, but the way you walk apparently is pretty unique. And they've got software now that say that. And this has all come back from the CCTV in London with the police watching people with their hoods up, right? Right. Anyway, so I think soon we will see personal ads as we're walking towards them.
Got it.
Right, or walking into store. Right, so I walk into, say, I don't know, Crew Clothing or whatever. It knows, that's John Redmond walking in, and it shows me the products I looked at online yesterday. It gives me a discount to buy them.
Shows you a super handsome 40-year-old biking down the street.
yeah, my mate, not me.
It reminds me of, I talked about this the other day, actually. I did a talk to one of our clients, and do you remember the film Running Man? Schwarzenegger back in the day. I think he's running through the airport, just trying to hide, and he sees the ads, on the billboard.
All targeted to him with his face on.
They're relevant to him, and that's 25 years ago in that film. It's obviously it's set in the future. But absolutely, you walk into a store. I think that as well. But I was talking about this very thing last week, 2 weeks ago. So you walk into a store. That store has got the data on you. It knows it's you either based on your mobile phone your code on your phone.
Oh yeah, there's loads of data they can get on you. Yeah.
Start to see on a mirror on the wall, mirror technology. Maybe you start to see yourself on the beach in Thailand as you walk in the travel agent.
Yeah. I think all of that. Yeah. And I don't think it's spooky if it's executed well and if it's relevant. Yeah. A lot of people think it's a bit spooky, but I think it's people got used to retargeting very quickly as long as it's relevant and interesting. It's just linking it all together.
We'll have to get you back on in 18 months and we'll compare notes on our in-store experiences. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, John. It's been an absolute blast. What, if you were to recommend one book to our listeners, what would that be?
Oh, a book, right. I suppose for this group of people, I read a lot of books. I've got loads of books I'd recommend. But for this group of people, I'd probably say there's a book called The Four, which is all about Amazon, Apple, eBay, and like the big four, and Google, the bit of a Facebook, the big sort of four technology businesses. Yeah. That's a very good book about the sort of the rise of the big tech firms and what their impact on the planet is. I would say that's a good book.
Brilliant. I've not had that mentioned, so that's great. Thank you so much. Well, for the guys that want to find out more about yourself, more about Mode 25 and what you're doing there, what's the best way to do that?
So either have a look at modo25.com or askbosco.io, or just drop me an email at john@modo25.com. That would be great.
Thank you. Well, thanks for being on the show. I look forward to catching up.